My husband refused to do a first dance at our wedding, and now I know why. Hi. I don't even know how to start this because I feel like I'm spiraling, and maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm not. I, 27 female, just got married to my husband, 29 male, a little over a month ago. We've been together for 5 years, engaged for about a year and a half, and I thought we were really solid. I thought I was marrying my best friend, my forever partner, my person. But there's this one thing that happened at our wedding, well, technically something that didn't happen, that I can't stop thinking about. And it's eating me alive. It wasn't some crazy scandal. No one cheated, at least not that I know of, and no one made a drunken speech. But it was something so small, so symbolic, and yet it broke something in me. My husband didn't want to do a first dance. Now, before anyone rolls their eyes, I know how it sounds. It's just a dance. Get over it. But please, hear me out. It's not about the dance itself. It's about what it represents. It's about standing in front of our family and friends, being celebrated, sharing this cheesy, romantic, silly little moment that I've dreamed of since I was a kid. It's about that cliche moment where the world fades away and it's just the two of you, even though you're surrounded by everyone you love. I always pictured it. I pictured our song. I had one picked out years before we were even engaged. I pictured my head on his shoulder, the dress swishing around us, the little laugh when we inevitably stepped on each other's toes. I pictured looking up at him and feeling like the luckiest woman alive because he was looking at me like I was the only one in the room. And instead I got nothing. No dance. No song. Just me standing awkwardly in the middle of a ballroom while the DJ tried to skip to the next part of the program because my husband had whispered, "I'm not doing this. It's stupid." And everyone noticed. That was supposed to be our first dance as husband and wife, but it never happened. I keep replaying it in my head over and over again. The look on his face when I asked him quietly if he was sure, the tension in his jaw, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, how he just shook his head firmly like he'd already decided long before this moment, and the way I had to swallow my disappointment and plaster on a smile like it was fine, like it wasn't the one thing I had been looking forward to for years. The thing is, it's not just the dance. It's what it means. If he couldn't do that with me, something so simple, so traditional, so full of love, then what does that say about everything else? I feel crazy even typing this out. It's a dance, and yet it feels like the tip of the iceberg. So here's some context, because otherwise this probably sounds like I'm being dramatic over one wedding tradition. My husband, let's call him Ethan, and I met in college. I was 21, he was 23. We were introduced through mutual friends, but at first we didn't really click. He was the quiet guy in the group. Not shy exactly, but the kind of person who always hung back and let other people take the spotlight. He was witty, though, and when he did say something, it usually made everyone laugh. Over time, we got closer, and eventually one thing led to another. We started dating about 6 months after we met. From the beginning, Ethan was complicated. He's not the type to gush about feelings or shower me with compliments. He's more the acts of service type, like fixing my car when it broke down, staying up late to help me study, cooking me soup when I was sick. And I love that about him. He always showed his love, even if he rarely said it out loud. But there were things. Small things, like how he hated PDA. I don't mean making out in public, I get that, but even holding hands sometimes made him stiffen. If I leaned in to kiss him at a party, he'd turn his head slightly so it landed on his cheek. When I teased him about it, he'd laugh and say, "I'm just not the romantic type, you know that." And I accepted it. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself not everyone has to be lovey-dovey all the time. The thing is, I am the romantic type. I grew up watching my parents dance in the kitchen. I grew up reading cheesy novels and daydreaming about that sweeping, cinematic love. I used to sit in my room as a teenager, blasting love songs and imagining who I'd dance with at my wedding someday. And when Ethan proposed, in his own quiet, understated way, I thought, this is it. I'll finally have that moment. There were other small compromises along the way. He didn't want engagement photos because he hates being posed, so we didn't do them. He didn't want a big proposal, so it was just us at home, no friends, no family, no cameras. He didn't want to write vows, so we stuck to the traditional script. And every single time, I told myself it was fine, because what mattered most was that we loved each other. But in the back of my mind, I always clung to the first dance. That was the one thing I thought he couldn't say no to. It's not a huge ordeal, literally just 3 minutes of swaying in front of people while music plays. Even introverts can handle that, right? Except there's also this. Ethan had a serious girlfriend before me. Let's call her Claire. They dated for about 3 years and broke up maybe a year before we met. He never talked about her much, and anytime I asked, he'd just say, "It didn't work out. I don't want to rehash it." I respected that. I didn't want to pry into his past. But sometimes little things slipped, like one time a song came on in the car, a slow, romantic song, and I remember reaching to turn it up, and Ethan instantly changed the station. I laughed and said, "Wow, you really hate that one?" And he muttered something like, "Bad memories." I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back now, maybe I should have. Because when he refused the first dance at our wedding, that same exact song, the one he skipped in the car, was the one I had picked out years ago for our dance. And now I can't stop wondering, did he know that all along? Wedding planning was honestly stressful, like it is for everyone, but we were getting through it. We picked a venue we both loved, he helped with the menu, he even sat through 2 hours of cake tasting without complaining, which was huge for him. For the most part, Ethan was cooperative, if a little detached, but I told myself that was just his personality. He's never been the type to get excited over decorations or color schemes. Then, about 2 months before the wedding, we were finalizing the DJ playlist. I casually brought up the first dance. I said, "So, we need to tell him our song." And that's when Ethan froze. He said, "Do we really have to do that?" I thought he was joking at first. I laughed and said, "Of course, it's like the moment. Everyone expects it." But his face didn't change. He looked serious. "I don't want to. It's embarrassing. Everyone's staring at us. It feels awkward. Can't we just skip it?" I stared at him, waiting for him to smile, to backtrack, to say he was kidding. He didn't. My stomach dropped. I told him it's not about people staring. It's about us. It's about that moment. He shook his head. "I hate dancing. You know that. I don't want to." I tried to push a little. I said I'd been dreaming about it my whole life, that it was one of the only things I really truly cared about, that we could keep it short, even 30 seconds, and then invite people to join. But he dug his heels in. I said, "No. Don't make this into a fight." It felt like he had just slammed a door in my face. I told myself maybe it was cold feet, maybe the pressure of the wedding was getting to him. He promised he'd think about it, but every time I brought it up again, he got short with me. "Why are you obsessing over this? It's not a big deal." So I dropped it, or at least I pretended to. Deep down, I clung to this hope that once the day came, once the music started, once everyone's eyes were on us, he'd do it. He'd take my hand, he'd step onto the dance floor, he'd choose me. But I was wrong. The night of the wedding, everything else went beautifully. The ceremony was perfect, the food was great, people were laughing and drinking and having fun. Then the DJ announced, "And now for our bride and groom's first dance." I turned to Ethan, smiling nervously. I held out my hand, And he leaned in, his jaw tight, and whispered in my ear, "I told you, I'm not doing this. Tell him to skip it." My heart dropped into my stomach. I whispered back, "Ethan, please, just one song, please." He shook his head, eyes hard. "No, it's stupid." The DJ looked confused, holding his equipment, waiting for us. Guests were clapping, cheering, looking expectantly at the dance floor. My mom had her phone out ready to film. And in that moment, I had to make a choice. Drag my husband onto the floor and risk a scene, or smile like nothing was wrong and wave it off. So I smiled. I waved it off. I whispered something to the DJ about moving on. And just like that, the moment I dreamed of for years evaporated. The rest of the night, people asked quietly what happened. "Why didn't you guys dance? Are you okay?" I brushed it off, saying, "Ethan doesn't like dancing. Haha, no big deal." But inside, I was shattered. I can't explain it. It wasn't just disappointment. It was humiliation. It was betrayal. It was standing there in my dress, in front of everyone I love, realizing that the man I married couldn't give me this one tiny moment. And worse, it wasn't just about him being shy or awkward. There was something in the way he refused. Like it wasn't just stage fright. Like it was something deeper. Something he wasn't telling me. And that thought has haunted me ever since. On our honeymoon, it came up again. I couldn't help it. We were lying in bed one night, and I said softly, "I really wish we'd had our first dance." Instantly, he stiffened. "We're not doing this again." I tried to explain. "Ethan, it meant a lot to me. It wasn't just a dance. It was symbolic. I wanted that memory." He groaned, rolled away from me, and snapped, "You're obsessed. Let it go. The wedding was perfect, and you're hung up on this one stupid thing. Why do you always have to ruin things?" I felt my chest tighten. Ruin things? I bit my tongue and didn't say anything else, but I cried silently while he fell asleep. After we got home, the tension lingered. We went back to work, back to routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. And then something happened. One evening, he left his phone on the counter while he showered. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But a notification popped up. A name I recognized from years ago. Claire. His ex. It wasn't just one text either. It was a string of them. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. And what I saw made my stomach drop. A few days before the wedding, she had texted him, "It's funny, isn't it, that you're getting married and that song will probably play? Hard to imagine you dancing to it with anyone else." He hadn't shut her down. He hadn't said, "Don't text me." He had replied, "Don't worry, I could never dance to that with anyone but you." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That was the song. Our song. The one I had chosen for our first dance. The one I had pictured for years. And suddenly it all clicked. The reason he refused wasn't because he was embarrassed or shy or stubborn. It was because that song didn't belong to me. It belonged to her. When he walked back in from the shower, I was shaking. I confronted him. I said, "Why are you still texting Claire? And what the hell does it mean that you could never dance to that song with anyone but her?" His face went pale, then angry. He snatched the phone from my hands and snapped, "You went through my messages? What is wrong with you?" I yelled back, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? You ruined our wedding because you didn't want to share a dance with your wife, because you're still hung up on your ex?" He swore that wasn't true. He said I was twisting things. He said she texted out of nowhere, that he was just trying to shut her up, and that I was blowing everything out of proportion. But his words, "I could never dance to that with anyone but you," they won't leave my head. Because what that tells me is that when I asked him to dance with me as his wife on the biggest day of our lives, he wasn't just saying no to dancing, he was saying no to betraying her. And that broke me in a way I can't even explain. I haven't been the same since that night. I keep replaying it. The text, the refusal, the way he looked at me like I was the one who had done something wrong just for finding out. And I can't shake the feeling that I'm second place, that I'm the consolation prize. We've had fight after fight about it every time he twists it around. If I bring up the text, he says, "I didn't mean it like that, you're being dramatic." If I bring up the dance, he says, "You're obsessed with fairy tale nonsense." If I bring up Claire, he says, "She doesn't matter. I married you, didn't I?" But isn't that the point? He married me, yet he couldn't even give me one moment of intimacy in front of the people who love us. He couldn't let go of whatever tether he still has to her long enough to hold me and sway to a 3-minute song. I keep thinking about how many times I compromise for him. No engagement photos, no proposal story to tell, no vows, and I told myself, that's okay because the first dance will be ours. Except it wasn't. It was hers. And now I can't stop asking myself, how much of our relationship has been haunted by her ghost? I've started noticing other things too, like how he still has a shoebox of old photos shoved in the back of his closet. He swears they don't mean anything, but I've seen her in them. Or how sometimes when we're at parties, he gets this distant look if certain songs play. I try to tell myself I'm overanalyzing, but then I remember the way his thumbs typed out those words. I could never dance to that with anyone but you. That wasn't just politeness. That wasn't shutting her down. That was devotion. That was loyalty to someone who isn't me. And I can't unknow it. Now I'm stuck in this horrible place. On one hand, I love him. We've built a life together. He's kind, dependable. He makes me laugh. He takes care of me in so many ways. Leaving feels like tearing my world in half. But on the other hand, how do you stay married to someone who reserves the most symbolic, romantic parts of himself for someone else? How do you live with the knowledge that on the most important day of your life, he chose her memory over your happiness? Every time I look at our wedding photos, I see what's missing. No first dance, no soft moment, just a blank spot where something sacred should have been. And every time I think about the future, anniversaries, children, growing old together, I feel this pit in my stomach because if he couldn't give me that, what else won't he give me? I feel like I'm going insane. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to be furious, that it's a huge red flag. Others say I'm being petty, that it was just one dance that I should let it go. But it doesn't feel small. It feels massive. It feels like the kind of crack that can split a marriage wide open if I don't face it now. And that's where I am. Torn, angry, heartbroken. Do I keep swallowing it and move on, pretending it was just one little thing? Or do I admit to myself that maybe, just maybe, this is proof that I've married someone who never really let go of someone else? Because right now I feel like I'm living in her shadow, and I don't know if I can do it forever. So here I am, sitting in our apartment, staring at the wedding album that feels like a lie. Everyone else sees a happy couple, smiling and celebrating. I see what's missing. I see the hollow spot where my dream should have been. And worse, I know why it's missing. Because my husband couldn't separate me from her. Because even on our wedding day, there was a line he wouldn't cross. And that line was drawn by a woman who hasn't been in his life for years, but somehow still owns a piece of him that I can never touch. I've tried to talk to him. He shuts me down. I've cried in front of him. He tells me I'm being overly emotional. I've asked him to go to counseling. He says there's nothing to fix. But something is broken, whether he admits it or not. And I don't know what to do. Do I stay married to a man who loves me in all the practical ways, but guards his heart like a museum that still has her picture hanging in the center? Do I accept that I'll never get the grand gestures, the romance, the feeling of being chosen above all else? Or do I admit that I deserve more? That I deserve a partner who would never let someone else's ghost dictate our marriage? I'm scared to bring this up again because I know it'll turn into another fight. I'm scared to tell my family because they'll never look at him the same way again. And I'm scared to leave because what if this is just marriage? What if I'm naive for thinking I could have it all? Reddit, please. Am I crazy for being this hurt? Am I blowing it out of proportion? Or is this the kind of thing you don't come back from? Should I fight for this marriage? Or should I accept that he already made his choice and it wasn't me?